this is going to throw some theories. This is going to throw people for a loop. So,
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carrie Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
It's going well, Lindsay. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Today's the day that Patrick is officially done with his Kilimanjaro hike. So I am really excited that my fiance is no longer out of cell service up a random mountain, not a random mountain, Kilimanjaro in Africa. So I just I just heard from him right before this call, and he said the first words out of his mouth were, "That was the best and worst experience of my entire life, and I already donated my shoes to my Sherpa and like the group that took us up." And he's like, "I'm never doing anything like that ever again."
Well, bucket list, he can check it off, right? He's had this bucket
Yep.
list, and now you guys are, that's a big thing to do, to be out of cell service and not be able to contact people very, very far away. And for anyone listening, he actually didn't start the trip very well. He wasn't feeling well. To start it off before you start climbing, to not feel well is not a good thing. So I'm glad he's okay. And I'm glad that is behind him and that he's not going to continue to make a habit of this. I'm very thankful from many different directions, right? Well, today we're super excited. We get to have John Darr, all the way from Florida, join us. He is the president or founder or owner of Darr Shacko Insurance, which is a Liberty company. John, we're super, super excited to have you here with us today.
oh, I'm excited to be here for sure. Anytime I talk about insurance, it's exciting.
It is. It's like the most exciting thing in the world, right? Like, I don't know what's wrong with these people that haven't figured that out. What the hell?
I
Yeah.
agree. I 100% agree.
Awesome. Well, John, we actually posted and said we'd love to talk to people who have experience acquiring agencies. So that's the topic. So anybody listening, if you want to get your notepad and pen out, John is a master at acquiring agencies. But before we dive into that, give us your background. Like, why insurance? How did you even find insurance, and why did you choose to make your career here?
Good question. So I grew up in Gainesville, Florida, which is a college town. Pretty typical upbringing. My father was a golf coach at Florida years ago. He was a golf pro for a little while, and then in 1992, he was recruited by Nationwide. He was an independent agent working for another guy in 1987, but he was recruited in 1992 to come work for Nationwide, open up his own nationwide insurance agency. And I graduated from the University of South Carolina in Aiken, South Carolina, after playing college golf as well in 1993, and came back to Gainesville and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I had a degree in economics and was staring at the typical, at the time, a lot of my friends were doing the old pharmaceutical rep jobs where they got a car and they got an allowance of some sort and they called on doctors' offices. And you know what? I wasn't sure I wanted to do that. So I sat down with my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, what is it that you do? Like, what exactly is it that you do for a living?" Because I knew he was an insurance guy, but I really didn't know. So he said, "Well, let me give you a short synopsis of what I do." He says, "I sell something that is required by law for people to purchase. And if it's not required by law, typically it's required by their mortgage company or their lender or something of that sort." So he said, "I sell things that they're going to buy from somebody. They may not buy it from me, but they're going to buy it from somebody." And I started thinking about that, and I'm like, okay, well, that sounds pretty easy. if they're going to buy it from somebody, I don't have to be too good. So he said, great. If you want to come to me, you got to go get your license. So I went and got my license. And then he handed me a phone book and a phone. And he said, here you go. You get to talk to all your friends, talk to everybody, because he knew I was one of the kids. I was one of the kids that I was friends with the cool guys. I was friends with the nerds. I was friends with the, what do you call it? I mean, back then they were punk rockers. I don't know. I seemed to be able to be friends with a huge array of people at the time, and I think he probably knew that might be helpful in the insurance world. So that's basically what I started. He was a nationwide agent, and he had nothing to give me. He was starting his own nationwide agent. That's 8 months into it,
Oh, wow.
and he's like, "Look, the only thing I can do is help teach you what to do." I says, "I can't do it for you. I have to do it for myself," and that's sort of how we started. And um, in the rest is history, as they say. I took to it like a duck on water. I still enjoy it every single day. I get in trouble all the time with my folks for trying to rate homeowners policies and car insurance policies and commercial policies when they just say, look, stop, don't even attempt to do that anymore. Just introduce me. I'll take it from there. And it's taken me years to come to grips with that, because I still do enjoy working with clients. As we started the call, I'm rating a bop on you know,
So
and I
let me
shouldn't
get
be
this
doing
straight. So let me just summarize this for everyone. You know how to golf well enough to play in college. You have the ability to make relationships with anyone, no matter what walk of life they're on. I think you're the perfect insurance agent, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like, what else do we need here, people? And you have an economics degree, right? So that's just like the added bonus, right?
it is, yes. That's to sum it up. That's kind of who I am. Yes, and that's to my career. I started out as a nationwide agent. My dad decided to retire in 2008. So for those mathematicians out there, he opened a nationwide agency in 1992 at the age of 47,
Wow.
and he retired at the age of 60. So my father was one of the greatest salespeople that I ever met. He sold an unbelievable amount of insurance. He was passionate about it. Quick story, because I'm sure the folks listening to this will enjoy this. So early on in my career, I used to sit in with him on these meetings, right? So he had this. It was a doctor and his wife that they would come in the office and they would sit down and they were talking about their insurance. And this doctor did not have an umbrella, did not have, I think he had like 25, 50 limits, and then goes through the presentation and he gets to the end and the doctor's like, well, let me think about it and I'll call you later. And he says, I tell you what, I'm going to leave the office. I'll walk around. I'll give you like 5, 10 minutes. You and your wife can talk about it here and I'll come back, because I'm so passionate about this that I do not want you to jump in your car and have something happen and me lay awake at night worrying and thinking that I did the wrong thing. So he gets up, leaves the room, leaves me in the room. I'm still sitting there with these folks. And they look at each other and they're like, okay, well, what is there to think about? Like, he's presented the umbrella, whatever. And the wife's like, I don't know. You're the one that said you got to think about it, or something to that effect. So sure enough, he comes back in and they signs the paper and they go, great, now you can drive home, because that's the way he treated it. It wasn't just, oh, that's okay, call me later. I'm gonna I'll call you next Tuesday, any of that. It was, hey, look, what we sell is super important. It's really important that you have this coverage. It could affect your life. And we're just talking about car insurance. When he talked about life insurance, it was a whole nother level of, he was going to make it awkward that you either you understood how important it was to him. And so anyway, that was who he was. So I learned under that, example growing up. And then he retired in 2008, and we went independent in 2008, nationwide in Florida, made all the agents in Florida independent in 2008. So that's when I started acquiring agencies. In 2008 was really when I started. I had built up enough of a business to survive, because this is not a get rich quick scheme, and I'm sure all the agents understand that it's a get rich slow deal. So I had been in the business 15 years, and he was retiring. So that's when I said, and I mean, Carrie, frankly, the first agency that I bought was a nationwide agency, and this guy approached me. Like, I had never bought an agency before.
Yeah,
He
so tell
approached,
us, how did you navigate that? Like that's how this
yeah. So
happens. Yeah.
when Nationwide made us independent, a lot of the guys that were Nationwide agents decided to retire because they could take they were eligible to take their what they call DCIC retirement, basically. So we're at a conference, we're at a meeting with a bunch of other Nationwide agents, and he comes up to me. And at the time, I was the youngest at these meetings by far. I was 15 years younger than probably the other youngest Nationwide agent. So he comes up to me and he says, "Hey, you're going to buy my agency." And I went, "Oh, really? I am. Okay." And he starts talking through. He says, "Yeah." He says, "I've been to meetings with you. I really like who you are and how you present yourself." He says, "I'm going to retire, and I'm going to retire and sell you the agency." And I said, "Well, Bill, I've never done this before. I don't really, I don't know what I'm doing." He says, "That's all right. We got it. We'll figure it out." Because Nationwide at the time had the program that essentially made it almost lock, stock, and barrel. Like, it was easy, step by step, and it was cheap. Luckily, it was, at the time, I want to say it was like 90 cents on the dollar. So I did the math enough to know that, okay, I think I can swing this. Now, this was an hour and 15-minute drive from my main office in Gainesville. So I knew, I'm like, okay, well, I've got to find the right people to work in this office, because I can drive down there some, but not, I can't go there every day. I wasn't going there every day. So frankly, that's the first agency that I ever bought. When we bought it, it wasn't too long to figure out that, okay, this is really profitable. Like, this is a great way to grow the business. And luckily, we just got really lucky in some respects. But one of the agents that came to work for us is a guy named Jordan Holmes. And Jordan is just an amazing, super wonderful. He is me reincarnated. He is me clone. He's a clone of me, literally. Played sports and played baseball in college. You know, all the things. He's just. So anyway, I basically brought him in to run that office, and he's from it's in Leesburg, Florida. So he's from Leesburg. He grew up there. He knows everybody there. He was, at the time, was working for Brown and Brown, and was like, "Look, I'm not sure that's where the best fit, so to speak." So he came to work for us, and it's been, he's still with us. Oh my gosh, it's been, well, this was probably 15 years ago now, 16 years ago, something like that. And he's built a great book of business, and it's, so that's sort of the first one. And then once we did that one, we figured out, okay, let's see if we can't do this again.
If you're an agency owner and you're thinking about selling your agency or thinking about growing by acquisition, you need to know what Cake is all about. Cake is an online marketplace designed to help buyers and sellers strategically find each other. One of the worst things you can do if you're selling one of your most valuable assets is to only talk to one buyer. Cake allows you to anonymously list a book of business or a slice or your entire agency for sale. Vet those opportunities and make sure that you've created demand for your agency and therefore the highest possible price. If you're looking to grow by acquisition, it's hard to find opportunities. Cake simplifies that process for you. I highly recommend to many of my clients that are thinking about dipping their toe into buying or selling an agency to check out Cake.
I'd love to double tap on something you said and have you expand a bit on it. So, you said that after your first acquisition, you realized that growth by acquisition was just such an amazing growth strategy, especially being in Florida.
Mhm.
Double tapping on that and kind of going a bit deeper, do you have in your agent, or do you buy them and consolidate them into all one agency, or do you keep them as separate agencies?
Great question. So most of the time, we keep them as a separate agency. You mean the location? Yeah, usually we keep the location if it makes sense. Um, there have been times where I've bought the agency and just folded it in, closed the location, and but we when we do that, we're transparent with the people we're buying it from and say, look, here's the plan. I've bought agencies in Wellington. I've bought agencies in Tampa. We don't have offices there. We don't have physical offices. But when I acquire them, I say, hey, look, here's the plan. Da 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 da. Whatever it
Yeah,
is. So
yeah,
they're not surprised because so many of these agents have built these books of business, over their life, and it's made them. It's kind of their identity. So you don't have to be aware of that. But so there's no real formula on that. It's just depends on the size. A lot of times, the people that come with the agency. I mean, we've acquired books of business and gotten wonderful folks to join our team, and we're very very thankful for that.
so going back to the growth strategy, so knowing that you buy them and keep them as oftentimes separate entities, is there a growth strategy? How does your new business growth strategy and your growth by acquisition strategy, do they work together? Are they separate completely? How do you think about that in your agency?
Yeah, so I have net. This is going to surprise some people. This is going to
A
throw
hot
some.
take. I'm
This
ready
is going to
for it, John.
this is going to throw some theories. This is going to throw people for a loop. So I am not a goal guy or a planner or a strat. Like, I don't sit down at the beginning of the year and say, okay, we're going to buy 4 agencies and we're going to write 373 auto policies and we're going to have 497 homeowners policies and we're going to do this and we're going to do. I've had one goal my whole career. That's it. My one goal my whole career has been sell one more policy.
Hmm.
Okay, so John, just for the people out in the world listening right now, you've had one goal, which is sell one more policy, but as you're working on that one goal, you've acquired how many agencies?
31.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's just say maybe there was a goal to also grow by acquisition. I'm just going to go out on a limb.
So remember, my goal was to sell one more policy, which means as soon as I got done, whatever it is I was doing, what's my goal? Go back and sell one more policy. So if I could acquire an agency with 1,000 policies, as soon as I acquired the agency, we folded it in and all the things. I always knew, okay, what do I do next? I go back and sell one more policy. Doesn't necessarily mean I sell the policy. It just means, hey, keep going, keep acquiring, keep trying. So to answer your question, the organic growth and the growth by acquisitions are really two totally separate things that, if you can pull them off, work really well together at the end of the year. So as we look back and we go, oh my gosh, we've acquired 31 agencies. That's a lot of business. We've also grown organically 15% every year.
Wow.
So
In Florida? Just in
mm,
Florida, or are you guys nationwide?
just in Florida, we do some stuff outside of Florida, but not
Ooh,
98% of what we do is in Florida.
wowza.
And remember, we're located in the north central part of Florida. So most people might know where Orlando is. Orlando's right in the middle of the state, sort of. We're 2 hours north of Orlando. When you think about hurricanes and risk and reinsurance, right? Most insurance companies want as much insurance as they can get in Gainesville, Florida. Why? Because we're an hour and a half from either coast. We're about as far inland as you can get. And because they have to balance this reinsurance, they were always coming to me and saying, hey, John, we want more business from you because my agents in Fort Lauderdale, not my agents, meaning the carrier agents in Fort Lauderdale, want to write more business. And the only way they write more business is if you write more business in Gainesville. So I started thinking, I'm going, well, what's in it for me? Because, I'm doing all this, I've got millions of dollars placed with them in Gainesville that they really like. And, so that's probably had something. It's just, again, it's pure luck on some levels.
So I can't pass up the 31 acquisitions. Like, come on, guys. We gotta dig into this a little bit, because the average agency would die to have 31 acquisition opportunities. So first and foremost, let's play a little game of true and false. Let's do that, and then we'll dig into some of them. Okay? Can we do a little true or false?
Yeah, sure.
True or false? Um, Small acquisitions are easier than big acquisitions.
True.
Ooh, that's a true for you. Okay.
Very,
Um,
very
tr-
true. And they're cheaper.
oh, well, they're definitely cheaper. I would agree with that sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes. But tell me why you think they're easier.
Well, a lot of times the smaller acquisitions those are the ones that we buy and roll in. So, you may not get people, but if you have a producer with a book that's, maybe they're a great service focused, intensive person and not so much a salesperson, I can take that book and buy it, roll it into, you know, Greg, the account manager, and all of a sudden, it might cost me, call it 15% of the revenue, to hand that to Greg and say, hey, here's a book of business. All I need you to do is reach out to these people on a regular basis, service it just like you're servicing your existing book of business. You're going to get a big raise for essentially doing nothing. So I get to keep 85 cents on every dollar because I don't have an office. I don't have people, and I roll it in, and it may get me eligible for more contingency. So if I can buy those books of business that do offer contingency, or give those clients a different market. So, we represent companies like auto owners. Well, auto owners in Florida is a really hard company to get access to. So if I can take those small personal lines agencies and take and offer them the carriers that maybe this other agency didn't have access to, it's a win-win for everybody involved. So when you look at a small agency, don't necessarily just look at, okay, well, this is, 2 times revenue or whatever. Look at how long it's going to take you to pay it off. And if you can buy it and roll it in and plug it into a book of business that you already have a producer for or already have an account manager for, that plays a part in the whole thing.
31, super high numbers, super impressive. I'd love for you to give us some insight into, you told us about your very first acquisition, that the owner of the agency came to you and said, hey, you're going to buy my agency.
Yeah,
I choose
yeah,
you.
yeah. I'm a genius,
That's
aren't I?
that's not necessarily the typical, like, how agencies find each other. So what in your, like, what's the strategy that you use, and what's the most common way that you're finding these agencies to buy?
Yeah. So so that's the only one that happened that way, for the record. But anyway, um, the biggest thing is getting the key people to know that you're in the market to acquire agencies, right? And key people, what I mean by key people are other insurance agents. Letting other insurance agents know, especially in your city, that you're acquiring agencies. Now, let me give you an example of here's how I acquired one right here in Gainesville. Okay. This was a nationwide agent. And I went to him and I said, listen, if you ever hear of an agency that is for sale, please call me and let me know. I'd love to know about it. I'd love to get a chance to talk to that person, whatever. Well, guess what? Guess who was for sale?
They were, for sure.
Absolutely. So he comes back to me and he goes, hey, by the way, would you be interested in acquiring? I'm getting ready to retire. Absolutely. Let's go have coffee. Let's sit down. Let's talk about it. And I always approach it from, what do you want out of the deal? I know what I want, but I don't know what they want. And it's the same thing when you're selling insurance. Hey, Mr. Customer, what do you want out of this deal? What do you want out of your auto insurance? Do you care that it actually covers anything or not? Right? So what happens, so that's key, insurance agents. Another key party is carrier reps,
Yep.
right?
Mm.
Carrier reps, all they do all day long is call on insurance agencies, and they know their insurance agencies very well. A lot of referrals came from carrier reps. Carrier reps will say, hey, John, I know of an agency that is probably either for sale or going to be for sale pretty soon. Would you mind if I introduce you to them? Right? Or they introduce me to them. Why would they do that? Why would they have an interest in introducing me to that other agency?
I know.
Well,
I know exactly why.
because didn't you just say you have to write more business so their agencies on the coast can write more business? So all of their business transfers to your code, which increases your, yeah.
Not only
So
that,
our loss ratios are good.
Mm-hmm.
So the carrier reps know, hey, this agency is good. They do it the right way. They write the right coverage. They do everything right. So when they have people that are for sale, they would much rather somebody like me buy them than big corporation from out of state who's going to come in and may just have part of their plan is to roll all the business to Timbuktu, who knows.
yeah, they want to retain that book and they want to place it with someone that they have a good relationship with. There's this, literally everything boils down to relationships, no question around it. So whether it's a network, a carrier, another agency, they want to know that their customers are going to be taken care of, the book's going to stay intact, and it's going to be a smooth transaction. So if they can facilitate a smooth transaction, they're going to go to agents that have experience doing this. It's worked out well. Same thing with agents. They're going to talk to other agents and say, what was your experience, and talk. And therefore, you're going to start to get referrals if you have transactions that go well. So if I were an agency and I wanted to acquire, because there's a lot of people out there and they're like, where do I even freaking start? Like, I have no idea. Number one, let other people know that you're interested. Number two, talk to your carrier reps. But are there other ways that they should put themselves out there? Give me what those are.
Absolutely. There's social media nowadays is so easy and is so effective in getting that message out. And one of the things that I did early on, like on LinkedIn and even on, it's probably on Facebook, because in Gainesville, people, I put a lot of information on Facebook about acquiring agencies. People are, for whatever reason, these are people not even interested in insurance. These are not insurance agencies that I'm talking about. These are people in general. Okay. I'll put on there, hey, I'm excited. I've got a contract on an agency. Um, Guess where it is? And I put a picture of the city of where it is. And people would go on Facebook and start commenting, oh, I know, that's the city building in Tampa. I don't know, whatever. They would say, or sometimes, I have an office in Perry, Florida, it's like little tiny town of Perry, Florida. So I'll pull a picture out of some building in Perry, Florida and put it on there and go, hey, we're acquiring an agency. Guess where it is?
That's fun. A little gamification.
And it drives Facebook to put out that algorithm. And people there's a handful of people that have nothing to do with insurance, but they know I buy agencies. And the first thing when I'll run into them in town is they'll go, hey John, where'd you buy an agency now? Give me the inside scoop on where are you going next. And I'm like, that's just amazing that somebody is paying that much attention to what I'm doing by putting fun things like that on Facebook. And so social media is huge. And the way you ask and the way you communicate that is super important. It's not just, look at me, I bought an agency in Orlando. Nobody cares. That's not, you're just bragging at that point.
It's kind of, my mom is going to roll her eyes at me. It is kind of a page out of Taylor Swift's book.
Love
Leave
Taylor.
people
Love
leave
Taylor
people
Swift.
little Easter eggs, and they will be way more interested and involved, and tell them you're leaving Easter eggs,
Yeah,
and you're going to draw attention to yourself.
I
absolutely.
cannot believe we are talking about Taylor Swift during an M&A conversation, but here we are. That's what we're doing.
I'm a
Oh my
Swiftie.
goodness. Yeah.
Yes,
You're a
I love
Swiftie, John? Are you truly a
Oh, God.
Swiftie? Wow, that's amazing. Very cool. All right, John.
Sure.
So here's the deal. We could
I have
probably
twin
have you.
24-year-old girls, by the way. I have twin 24-year-old daughters.
Oh, then
One
you're
of which
definitely a Swiftie. Yes.
one of which is named Lindsay, by the way, with an EY.
Oh my goodness. We could be
Ah.
friends. You'll have to
Mhm.
connect us.
Yeah.
So, John, we could talk about acquisitions forever because we could go from, all the way down your 31. But as you reflect on the 31 acquisitions that you've done, and you were going to give advice to someone who's never done it before, what are the top 5 pieces of advice that you would give someone before they embarked on this journey?
Yeah. I think you got to get the financing part. You have to sort of get that firm locked up. We worked with Westfield Bank, Mike Wagger.
Super great guy. Yeah, super great guy.
Yeah, he really knows what he's doing. Have those conversations. Have conversations with your carriers. Go to your carriers before you even have an agency lined up and say, hey, if I bought an agency and it was in town or the 3 towns over or whatever, what would travelers think about that? How would that play out? What questions would travelers have? What would you guys require? How long would it take? Progressive takes forever and a day to get. You buy an agency with Progressive, it takes literally months to get it processed and get it folded in. So do your homework around all of those things. Go to the carriers, go to your agency management system if you're on, like we're on Applied Epic, but go to your management system, because when you acquire that agency and you flip that code or flip that switch, how is that information going to come into your system? How are your producers? How are your agents? How are your account managers, CSRs? How are they going to know what it is and how to work with it and what the processes are? Do all of that, as much of that homework first, and know, because right now in Florida, that's really hard. That's the really hard part is, for a while, these carriers, such a hard market that these carriers, when I buy an agency, they're like, whoa, we really don't even want that book of business. This is an opportunity to get off of that book of business. Okay, you better know that before you buy it, because I bought an agency in Perry, and last summer, Hurricane Idalia went right over top of it, literally right through town, and blew down a bunch of stuff. So we were under contract to buy this agency in July. Hurricane Idalia goes right through the town where I'm buying this agency at the end of August.
Oh my goodness.
The person selling calls and she says, so I guess you don't want to buy in this agency, do you? And I said, no, we still do. And she's like, what? Explain why you would want to buy this agency. Because, now she's got a loss ratio problem. She's got, you got accounts with, well, I knew the carriers that she had in her book when we rolled it in was a minuscule part of the entire book. So when you roll in, I forget, her revenue was about 200,000, let's say. When you roll that in to the carriers that we have millions of dollars placed with, loss ratio doesn't, so it goes from 35 to 42. Who cares? It's not going to matter. So you got to do all of that kind of homework and think about all of that first. And then when you sit down when you get in front of the person that is going to sell you their baby, that is their baby. A lot of them have worked 20, 30, 40 years to build this agency. Listen to what they say. Don't tell them how it's going to go or what's going to happen. Listen to what they want out of the deal. And if you can give them what they want out of the deal, do the deal. If you can't, say, hey, look, thanks so much for your time. I can't get to where you want to be. Here's why I can't get to where you want to be, for whatever reason. Be transparent, be honest, open, and say, look, I remember we were dealing with an agency. We were trying to acquire an agency about 30 miles south of here, and he was dead set on 4 times revenue, right? And it was a situation where I had to keep the office, and I liked the people. I love the people that work for him. I just couldn't warrant 4 times revenue. I couldn't make the numbers work.
You're
Right.
right. So
Hey,
when to say yes and know when to walk away is really, really is something you found really important.
absolutely. And I was transparent with him. I sat here and went, look, it's going to take us 15 years to pay this back. If we don't lose the first policy, it's going to take so long to pay you back that it's just not, it doesn't make sense for me. Now, somebody else it might make sense for, and if that does, great, good luck, more power to you. Thanks so
Well,
much for your time.
that goes back to not every buyer's right for every seller, and not every seller's right for every buyer. But if you know your numbers, surround yourself with super smart people, and know what you're looking for and stay true to that, you're going to make good decisions. There's really no two ways around that. But if you try and fit a square peg in a round hole, you're going to end up with a bad deal, and you're not going to have a good experience. It's not like every single one of these deals is a good deal. So my. So we could talk about this forever and ever and ever. But John, I truly appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience. You definitely have more experience than the average bear. That is for sure. If somebody is thinking about this and they're like, man, I'd love to pick his brain and ask my 72 questions that I came up with as I listened to him talk, how can someone
Sure.
reach out to you?
My direct line is 352-244-0328. That will go past the folks up front that kind of try to protect me and call with calls, but that's my direct line. Feel free to call me. My email is jdarr@darrschackow.com, which is spelled DARRSCHACKOW, insurance spelled out.com. Yeah, I mean, we're located in Gainesville, Florida, so chances you can Google me and I'll probably
Absolutely. Well, thank
show
you
up.
so much for coming on and sharing your story. It is very, very impressive. I love how willing you are to share, and I'm sure lots of people got all kinds of insights by listening to your story. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it for sure.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carrie directly at carrie@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.